Welcome in. It's the early Wedge. I'm Rick Gehman, and today we are DFSing the Travelers Championship, going tier by tier, finding the best and maybe the worst plays for the week. Joining me to break it all down, Nejad is here. Sia, hello and good day.
Normally, I'm super excited about just a DFS slate that's out, a new bracket, if you will, even though it's not actually a bracket, but that's how it feels. But I'm still a little miffed over the Sam Burns thing, hitting out of a baby pool, and also not really loving this no cut thing. I'm hoping that changes over time as well. However, I've already kind of formulated some lineups, and I am pretty excited about some roster constructions for this week.
Yeah, the no cut thing. I'm over it. We've seen it for a couple of years. Just give me some cut. Give me 80 to 50. Give me, ideally, I think it's probably 100 to 50. But the 72, everybody gets through. I don't know. Mike McClure is here. Hi, Mike.
What's up, Rick and Sia? How about Sia mentioned like a bracket, and I was starting to think there. I wouldn't mind seeing this field where it is, but cut it down to 32. We'll start a little later on Saturday and Sunday, and really make it still difficult to really be playing all 4 rounds.
Yeah, I love the built-in Friday drama of how many 6 of 6 lineups are you possibly going to get through, and how does that impact the rest of the I think that's kind of one of the skills is like how many can you get through, and then of those you get through, how many can make their way up the leaderboard. Anyway, we could discuss that for hours upon hours, but there is no time to waste. We are going from a U.S. Open venue at Oakmont to the Travelers Championship, TPC River Highlands. This is a golf course that we see annually. It's got pretty sticky course history, and it is going to be very different from what we saw last week in Pittsburgh. Sia, what are the comparisons and contrasting opportunities for these two golf courses?
Yeah, I mean, completely different, especially when you consider what the final and winning scores are going to be, and relative to par. I mean, this is to me, Rick, this is just a classic positional track where you're not pulling out driver a ton, and you're really dialed in. You got to be dialed in on approach and with the putter. I mean, you've got to be able to score. You got to be a birdie maker. So that's certainly what I'm focused on. I mean, you look at last week, you kind of needed to be good at a lot of things, but I don't know, just to some degree, some of the accuracy guys last week that will be good this week. Certainly I think there is some crossover there, to be honest with you. But outside of that, I don't see much crossover, as you were kind of alluding to. Again, ball strikers, approach play, that proximity, 175 and less. And then the putting, just being able to string birdies together. You've got all 4 rounds. So you're not super afraid of a guy missing a cut and having a bad Thursday or Friday. You just need guys that are going to score 3 out of 4 rounds at least.
Josh has the scorecard on the screen right now for TPC River Highlands. It says 6,844 yards as a par 70. Mike, that's not a typo. That is absolutely correct. One of the shortest golf courses that we get on the schedule.
Yes, short course. Definitely going to be a contrast from what we just witnessed. I always get to this spot too. And I think there are certain players in the field that I think could have a little bit of that mental fatigue from what they just went through a week ago. I think we talk about that a few times a year, whether it's warranted or not. I think after what we just saw, it is kind of warranted, but for me, it's classic. As Sia mentioned, tee to green weighted the heaviest for me, par 4 scoring. Some of the approach buckets we'll be looking at a little bit. Certainly some of the stuff still over 200 yards. But yeah, I think that it's going to be birdie makers again. And I'm excited because I think I'll be back on Justin Thomas, even though you didn't ask for some names yet.
I can absolutely see why that might be. See, let's drill into the post-major championship, especially a post-Oakmont U.S. Open conversation for just 1 second. Are you trying to quantify? Are you doing anything with those guys who are very much in the heat of the battle for 4 grueling rounds, wet, nasty, slog, particularly on Sunday? Are you doing anything different, or are you wiping the slate clean?
I'm mostly wiping the slate clean, and I do understand that might be to my detriment. Like when I look at some guys that I like this week. Sam Burns is a guy that I'm not 100% sure I'm going to be on Sam Burns, but he's a guy I like, just like I liked him last week. A guy like Ryan Fox, who I think is a flat 7K. He made the cut, so he played all 4 rounds. He wasn't necessarily like kind of like in that grueling portion of it where he's fighting to top 5 or win this thing. But those guys I'm still going to play, and I'm just going to hope that the mental fatigue and the physical fatigue, which certainly what seemed like it was out there, isn't going to be at play. But if somebody was like, yeah, I'm avoiding these guys and I'm playing, Rick, we talked about it yesterday, like Sepp Straka, like perfect, right? Because he missed the cut and he's just a great course fit out here. Like there are reasons to play some of these guys who maybe only played 2 rounds, but happen to be good course fits at TPC River Highlands. Nonetheless, I'm probably largely ignoring it.
Yeah, maybe not so bad to have the weekend off as opposed to dealing with what some of those guys dealt with over the final 2 days. Well, it is, as mentioned, it's a no-cut event, 70 some odd players in the field. Almost all of the top players are going to be in attendance. I want to start naming some names here and go through this stacked field. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
And we're back. All right, let's fire up the cheat sheet here. This is my website, rickrungood.com. There are 4 golfers, gentlemen, over $10,000 for this week. It's Scottie Scheffler, a discount from last week, $13,300. Rory McIlroy, $11,500. Xander Schauffele is 10.8, and Colin Morikawa is 10.2. That's the cream of the crop there, Mike. What are we doing at the top of the board?
We're definitely playing some Scottie Scheffler. It's a no-cut event, which means your 6K, 7K guys are playing all 4 rounds. He is at a really strong discount relative to where he was last week. You remove guys like Bryson, who did miss the cut, and John Rahm from the field. It's Scottie at the top. After that, number 2 for me, I actually am going to play quite a bit of Xander Schauffele. I think Xander is so close, and I think this fits him extremely well. Scottie and Xander, not necessarily in the same lineup, but those 2 will be in a lot of lineups for me.
Both of those guys are past champions here. Scottie Scheffler's record, better every year, miscut, 47th, 13th win. And he's your defending champion. I don't know how you get better than that for this year. If anybody can figure it out, it is Scottie Scheffler. And then, of course, Xander Schauffele won this event in 2022. Sia, when you see the top of the board, how are you attacking it?
I love the top of the board. This is really interesting. So I'm all for Rory. And I don't really feel the need to discuss that too much. Although if his ownership ends up being super low, then I guess I would consider him, but probably not. I love the other 3. And I love the roster construction with Scottie Scheffler and somebody in the 8 or 9K range, or Xander and Colin Morikawa. And then you just kind of go from there, because I do want to point out, if you do Scottie and like a guy like Keegan or Straka, in Keegan's case, it's 7,050 left with Scottie and Keegan. In the Straka example, it's 6,875. But if you go Xander and Morikawa, and I do like them both, you're still left with 7,250. And then all of a sudden at that point, you can speculate a lot in that 6, 7 and upper 7K range. So I really like both of those types of constructions. As far as Xander, I agree with Mike, and I might raise him a little bit in terms of what he said. I don't think he's close. I think we're going to see that he's there this tournament. So I know we're kind of saying the same thing, but I really like what I'm seeing. And for a superstar like Xander Schauffele, I don't need to see it for a consistent period of time. Once a superstar turns it on, I expect it to be on. I really like what Xander Schauffele is doing. So in on him. Colin Morikawa is interesting because I'm never really on him or Xander, to be honest. But I mean, if you look, let's look at his profile over on Rick Run, because I think this is super interesting. If you were to look at a model, look what he lost with the putter. I don't know if people can see this super clearly, but he got absolutely murdered with the putter. It was last week, right, at the U.S. Open. But look what he did with the ball striking. And if you put this in a model, like his putting is going to look really bad because he was so bad at the U.S. Open, at Oakmont specifically. But the putter's been okay in 3 out of the last 4, actually better than okay, with the exception of Oakmont. And the ball striking is very much there. I think Colin, I don't know that he's going to win the tournament, but I think he's a great play. So I'm in on Xander. I'm in on Colin.
The putter lost him nearly 9 strokes last week at Oakmont. It was the worst putting performance of his career, but he offset all of that almost identically with the approach play. That's what Sia is referring to if you are just listening or if you cannot read that on your screen. I've got to play devil's advocate here just a smidge. I feel the duty to do just that. Mike, I'll start with you on Rory McIlroy. Is there a number? Rory McIlroy comes in at 1% projected ownership. Like what would it take to get Rory McIlroy into your lineups over these other three? Maybe it's a number of lineups that you would play. How many lineups would you have to play before you got to Rory McIlroy? Let's lay out the case in favor of him.
Yeah, I think that I like the question you ask, how many lineups, because if I were playing a 150 set, of course I'm going to play some Rory. If I was playing 100, of course I'm going to. At 5 or 3 where I start, no. At 5, no. At 10, no, with where I think the ownership will be. In a 20 max contest, I probably would have at most 2 Rory lineups, which would be 10%. That is where I would be. And, when I looked at everything there, I forgot Rory was in this field initially. When you asked me to look at the top group of pricing, I just completely glossed over Rory because he was not in my top 5 in my rankings, how I kind of had it sorted here. So I'm so much higher on Xander that I think there's basically no scenario that my main teams and the higher stakes teams that I'm playing will have Rory McIlroy in them this week.
Fair enough. We'll continue down to this 9K range, and there are 6 golfers here. A couple of them very much in the mix from last week. Patrick Cantlay is 9,800. Ludwig Oberg is 96. Justin Thomas is 93, and Sepp Straka 92. They all missed the cut last week. Sam Burns, obviously, was in the final group on Sunday, 9,100. Victor Hovland ended up finishing in solo third. He is 9,000. So, Sia, here we go. We've got a price range where more than half the golfers missed the cut, and the other 2 were in every moment of the oven last week.
Yeah, they really were. Rick, let me ask you though, before I answer this question, you did say, and maybe you just kind of like said it in an odd way, but you said you were going to push back on Roy, and that was just by presenting just the case, right? In terms of like asking us the question, are you in on Roy this week?
No. And it is, I could be concerned about all the like off the course golf stuff. I think there's a really good chance that I'm not invested again in Rory McIlroy until the Open Championship. And if he can't get up for a Royal Portrush Open, like massive issues. Yep. I'm worried about even just all the other things. Like he has not been very good on approach. I don't think that he gets to use his weapon as much around TPC River Highlands. I'm talking about the driver in particular. He picked up like 6 strokes off the tee last week, so I'm not worried about that at all. But no, I think this is a golf course that neuters him a little bit. And then I think that this is clearly something going on with the approach play. And I have not even discussed the fact that he might just be completely checked out.
Yes. Yeah, there's that checked out part too. All right, let's go to the 9K range. Sorry about that. So I don't like this range at all. You know me. I'm usually a big 9K guy, but I'm not in on this range. And it's partly because of the roster construction that I just talked about, where I'm doing the Scottie lineups with an 8 or 7K guy and the Xander Morikawa lineups. But when I look at these guys, like I think this is going to be a really interesting ownership scenario that we'll discuss on Wednesday. I'm not in on Cantlay. I haven't been on Cantlay in a while. Same with Ludwig. I mean, I think Ludwig shows signs, and I think when you're getting Ludwig for 4 rounds, like it absolutely makes sense to play him if ownership is low or maybe regardless. But again, I'm just not loving the experience of those 2. Justin Thomas, I get the argument for Justin Thomas, but the play has been so bad as of late. If you look at the last few rounds here, like what he's doing on approach is it's just kind of mind-boggling. But again, I don't mind playing Justin Thomas. Looking at the rest, Sepp Straka is certainly a consideration. I just think he's going to be a little too popular for me. I'm just guessing there. And as far as Burns, he and Hovland are guys that I would probably consider playing the most. I don't know that I'm going to get to Burns because of how I'm constructing my lineups, but I don't mind going back to Burns.
Yeah, clearly Sam Burns and Victor Hovland playing great golf. They were both on the verge of winning a major championship. Mike, you've already pointed out the fact that Justin Thomas has your attention. I'm assuming it is a similar conversation to what he did at Harbortown, which is, hey, throw the driver away and lean into your strengths.
100%. Throw the driver away. He had an awful week last week, and he missed the cut, got out of there early. I think that was great. Get an extra day or two off. And again, removing the driver is a huge deal for Justin Thomas. I think he's in a great spot here at 9,300. So he's going to be my favorite in this range. Now, after JT, I still have some interest. Sepp Straka rates really well. I'll probably play him a little bit. I like Tommy Fleetwood here. I like Fleetwood a bit. Again, another guy that miscut. Is he 89?
Yeah, you are a cheater. You are cheating.
God,
you're
believe
this guy? You're getting
I'm reading
out ahead.
it wrong. I'm looking at Victor Hovland and Fleetwood right next to each other here. Hovland rates well. Not going to play him. I think that he went through a lot mentally in that one, and I could be wrong, but I think he had a really awesome showing at the US Open. I'm not going to play him here, and I'm sorry for skipping ahead to the 8K range, but it's mostly Justin Thomas in this range for me.
Rick, can I do something? Sorry, I know I kind of threw it off with the 9K question to you, but so we got a lot of people in the chat, and John Newcomb is saying, not sure if you've talked about it, but he likes Brian Harman and Ben Griffin. No problem with Ben Griffin there. Can you just do me a favor and just pull up Brian Harman's profile real quick on Rick Run? Because I agree with the mindset. Hey, Brian Harman, seems like a pretty good course fit. Good history. Look at his metrics.
Are those any good?
I mean, what's happening here? Like, he could turn it on a course like this, I suppose, but no.
If you're only listening, the tee to green numbers are the darkest red you're going to find on the site. The putter has been okay, but it is a lot of really sour results. Quite honestly, he wasn't playing that well before the win, and he's played worse after the win. So it's not a particularly great site for Brian Harman. Let me get us back to the 9K range here. See anybody else that you think is worth it? I mean, it seems like we're circling JT, we're circling Straka, and you are probably more bullish on going back to Burns and Victor from a fatigue perspective than most are going to want to this week.
And so that's the beauty of it, is if people are like, yeah, I'm out on Burns, he can't close, he's going to be tired. Like, I'm talking about Burns specifically. I'm more than willing to go back to him because the metrics really, really speak to me as far as he's concerned. The one watch out for Sepp Straka is that I don't think his history here is particularly impressive. And some people might say, well, it's a different Sepp Straka now than before. But even over the last couple of years, when it was a signature event, T23, T38, not great. You could make the same argument about the guy I just repped in Colin Morikawa, but what I'll say about him over the last 3 years, it was miscut. Then I think he was like T13 or something. His metrics were really bad in those first two, and he gained everywhere last year when he played here. So I do think Colin Morikawa is kind of getting the hang of how to play here. But I just might be out on Straka altogether. I just have a feeling he's going to be somewhat highly owned.
10 golfers in the $8,000 range, starting with Tommy Fleetwood. That's where we'll start. Russell Henley, Corey Connors, JJ Spawn, and Keegan Bradley right there in the middle. Robert McIntyre, Shane Lowry, Jordan Spieth, Benny Griffin, and Hideki Matsuyama rounding out the rest. Mike, let's do the Tommy Fleetwood conversation. Let's talk about Tommy, who's coming off his first miscut since last year's Open Championship.
Yeah, I think that if there were a place to give Fleetwood a pass for missing a cut, number one, it's one miscut, as you talked about. It would be in those just conditions that they just played in, right? I think that having a few days off, similar to Justin Thomas, is not going to be a bad thing. And if you look at everywhere else, ahead of this event, averaging over the last 5, I believe he was gaining strokes, in every category on an average, right? So I think that it's a great time to go back to him. I think people still look at game logs a little bit and see miscuts and really penalize golfers a little more than they should. So I just think Tommy Fleetwood's going to be extremely relevant. And again, love the fact that I'm getting a no-cut event here.
Only 3 golfers in this range failed to complete all 4 rounds. Tommy Fleetwood, Shane Lowry missed the cut. Corey Connors withdrew after the 3rd round with a wrist injury. We'll need to keep an eye on that. Sia, when I open up this $8,000 range to you, what do you start grabbing first?
I think this is an interesting range because I think it's going to get looked over and passed over quite a bit because of how people are going to play the top. And we know that barbell approach, Rick, in these signature events certainly is at play. So I think that while the 7K range is going to be very popular in certain areas, I wonder about this range. I think Russell Henley, who you happen to have starred here on RickRunGood.com, I think he's interesting. I mean, obviously, when you're looking at good ball strikers, Russell Henley's gonna sort of pop at the top of the board there. Outside of him, though, I don't know who else. I'm not getting to Tommy Fleetwood. I'm not going to play Connors. I am a little concerned about his injury, but also his upside. JJ Spawn, if there was anybody to make the argument that maybe a guy like JJ Spawn just might take his foot off the gas, whether he realizes it or not, I could see that happening. Keegan's going to be popular, which is why I'm definitely not playing him. I don't mind the play, but just from a DFS standpoint, not in on that. Jordan Spieth and Ben Griffin would be the two guys that I think I'd be most inclined to play. And I think Jordan Spieth, I don't think at that price range, I don't think he's going to be very highly owned. I think he's really interesting. If I'm making, which I am, more than a handful of lineups, Jordan Spieth's going to make his way. I'll make sure to be at least slightly overweight on him.
It would be vintage Corey Connors to finally win a golf tournament coming in with an injury concern while everyone passes him over for Russell Henley and Keegan Bradley. So I'm certainly expecting that. The bottom of this 8K range is interesting, Mike. You've got you've got Ben Griffin, who's played incredibly well. You've got Hideki, who has struggled a bit. Jordan Spieth's all over the yard. Like, what do you do at the bottom of this range if you're forced to click a name?
If I'm forced to click a name, it's probably going to be Spieth, which I think is fascinating because he's played pretty well, all things considered. But man, the course history here has been awful.
It's a win and then disaster.
Right. It's disaster. And I think that part is kind of interesting. I'm probably more willing to buy in on his current form, which again, I think is pretty good. At that price point, given the fact that you're guaranteed 4 rounds. So in this range, it would be Spieth first, Ben Griffin second. And after that, I guess Hideki, but as I'm scrolling, yes, it's very clearly Ben Griffin and Jordan Spieth, to be honest with you.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to continue this conversation. We are going to keep scrolling. Still some great names in the 7K range. We've got to get to the 6s as well. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
The crowd loves champions. Gladiator 2 is an epic spectacle. Remarkable! To amuse you is my only wish.
The glory is yours, not mine.
Very good. Gladiator 2, rated R. Now streaming on Paramount+.
22 golfers in the $7,000 range. Sung J M, Taylor Pendrith at 7,900. The middle of the range, that's where you'll find Aaron Ryan, Daniel Berger. The bottom of the range, that's where you'll find Ryan Fox, Jason Day, and Denny McCarthy. Sia, I'll open this up to you here first. A lot of interesting options here. Where do you want to go?
So if you want to start your lineup relatively chalky, and I think this will be at least somewhat chalky heading into Thursday, I started a lineup with Xander and Morikawa, which I already told everybody leaves you with 7,250. I added Cameron Young in there, who's going to be popular, and Xander probably too, maybe not so much Morikawa. That leaves you with 7,067 to round out your last 3, and it's very easy to round out your last 3. So I'm going to start with Cameron Young at 7,800. I don't know what more we can ask for. I understand he carries a name where it's like, oh, he's just going to flop at some point, but T4 over the last 2 tournaments, 2 different types of tournaments, mind you, RBC Canadian Open and the US Open. He was already trending prior to that. We saw the T7 at the Truist. And oh, by the way, last year, if memory serves, he was T9. Like, he's just checking all the boxes. The metrics are there. The putting is certainly there, but the ball striking is there as well. I don't really see an argument against him, which is why he's going to be quite popular in my opinion. And so we'll just have to make that decision once we realize what the ownership is trending like. I really like him. As we go down the board, I like Harris English, former winner here. I've been on English for quite some time. He's a guy I like. And I did mention Ryan Fox as well, who, for the record, I put in that lineup that I started with Colin, Xander, and Cameron Young. Ryan Fox, like, we want to look at those metrics too. He has become like a ball striker, straight up ball striker. Like, he's reining it in off the tee in terms of like being relatively accurate, and the approach play is there, and we know he can knock it down with the putter. I think, again, he's been through a lot over the last few weeks, winning a lot, playing a lot, but I can't resist the call of a Ryan Fox at 7,000.
Yeah, Ryan Fox wins Myrtle Beach. Then he finishes T28 at Quail, T20 at Muirfield, wins the Canadian Open, and then finishes T19 at the US Open. So yeah, pretty good little 5 tournament run for Mr. Fox, who checks in at $7,000. Okay, Mike. Where do you want to start clicking names and start adding to your lineups here?
Siwoo Kim.
Is that a question? Or is that a
I'm looking at everything here, and he's like fourth in this field. Tee to green over the last like 24 rounds, right? Yeah. Pretty good. Lost 4 strokes putting last week, I believe. I'll give him a pass on that. Was gaining everywhere before that. And part of the reason I'll give him a pass on that, the 3 events prior to that, 6.8, 2.7, 1.1. It was also the 3rd time since May 4th at the CJ Cup where he gained 7+ strokes on the field tee to green. He has just been dialed tee to green. It comes down to the putting, and I'm willing to forgive some of the erratic putting results because he does still rate pretty well in terms of 3-putt avoidance. So I like a little Siwoo Kim. In this one, Daniel Berger projects well. He's 7,500. He probably should be 8,500. I think he's going to be very popular. Still going to play him. Aaron Rai is going to be popular. He can hit those greens in regulation, which will put him in a pretty good spot. Ryan Fox, as Sia mentioned, at $7K. I like him a bit. And I can never quit Luke Clanton. I think this time around, I think no one's going to play him. So I think I'll pair him with Justin Thomas and just simply root for variance in my favor. But I do like Luke Clanton again at 7,400.
Yeah, it is amazing that, his first start as a professional, he was probably one of the most talked about golfers. And then he misses the cut, not horribly. And now everyone forgets that he exists. So we'll see how he plays for a second start as a professional. That's Luke Clanton we're referring to here. Anybody else in this 7K range, Sia, before I move us along?
A couple of guys that I'm hoping aren't too popular. One, I think he just has name value. People like to say his name. Akshay Bhatia rates out really well. Another guy that rates out well for me is Harry Hall. I think the ball striking for him is starting to come around, and we know he can lean on the putter. When you look at stuff like, Rick, on your site, when you look at Opportunities Plus, which is when you're dialing it in within 10 feet, right? Is that what that stat is?
Yeah. It's how many birdie opportunities you have 10 feet or closer, whether you make them or not, it doesn't matter. It's an approach stat.
Right. And it's also like correct me if I'm wrong, but I also kind of look at that as an aggressiveness stat too. Sure. Do you kind of look at it that way as well?
Yeah. It's like, are you willing to take on pins, and are you able to pull it off? And particularly compared to your peers.
Well, I went the last 26 rounds, just a kind of a number. I just, you can do 24, you can do 20, you can do whatever you want, 36. Cameron Young is really high on that list. Scottie, Scheffler, of course, guys like that. Ryan Fox is really high on that list. Sam Burns really high on that list. Akshay is, and Harry Hall, he's not super high on the list, but he's certainly inside the top 20. Those are guys that I'm focused on, partly because of that metric, Rick, as well.
Yeah. Give yourself enough opportunities, make the putts, and cash a check, collect a trophy along the way. The $6,000 range. This is where we've got the remaining 30 golfers. We've got names like Fitzpatrick, Grazerman, Nick Taylor at 6,900. The middle of this range, that's Max Homa, Alex Noren, Steven Yeager. The bottom of the range, Nick Dunlap, Joe Highsmith, Brian Campbell, who have mostly been living down at that min price for the last couple of starts. Mike, find me some value, please, sir.
All right. Kevin Yu. See it in the chat. I agree with it. I think Kevin Yu should at least be 7K flat. I would probably still be interested in rostering him at 7,200. So 6,400 on Kevin Yu stands out a lot. The guy we've talked about quite a bit this year, Ryan Gerard, also 6,700. Really like him from 200 yards plus. Rates very well there. I will play a little bit there. Bud Cauley, another name. Just the guys that have played good enough golf that could easily be, in that next tier, in that 7K tier. And Andrew Novak. I mean, Novak 6,700. I think those guys all could easily be, in that 7K tier, and none of us would be talking about it at all.
Yeah, there's like a weird divide. Sia, it's, the way that you get into these events, there's a lot of ways. It's the guys that did one thing last year to get into all of them, potentially, right? You get into let's say you got into the Tour Championship, or you got into the top 50, or you won some one-off event. And then it's guys that have played better recently to earn their spots in through like the swing 5 or the next 10 or whatever they call it. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, so there is kind of a divide. To throw the guys under the bus, like Brian Campbell, Joe Highsmith, Nick Dunlap are riding accomplishments from a long time ago. And then guys like Mike has pointed out, Gerard and Kevin Yu and Bud Cauley have played their way in more recently, which I think is a very clear divide at the bottom of this board.
I do. Speaking of, can we scroll to the bottom of the board? Because I want to work my way up and I want to finish at 6,900 because there's a guy I really like for a very specific reason. First of all, listen, if you have to dig down in this low 6K range, I think Lucas Glover would be the guy that people would focus on, and that's fine. But I actually think Austin Eckroat is like the guy that nobody's actually going to play. That, again, the ball striking hasn't been there, but he's classically a good ball striker. It's the putter that has been a complete disaster for him. I'm just throwing it out there as a 6,100 option that nobody's going to play to get your lineups a little different. As we scroll up, I think Matty Schmidt is interesting, even though this doesn't appear to be the Matty Schmidt course fit, but we've seen him succeed on shorter tracks before. Kevin Yu, I do agree with, although I don't think I'll get to him if people end up playing him to any degree. As I scroll up, though, Bud Cauley I like quite a bit, actually. And it's Max Grazerman that is the guy I really like. And if we can pull up his profile, Rick, I think he's so interesting because what do we think of when we think of Max Grazerman? We think of really good off the tee and really good with the putter. Well, this is very deceiving because we're seeing 2 good finishing positions over the last 2, T23, T25 at the US Open and the Memorial, 2 tough tracks. But look how he's doing it. He actually lost with the putter in both of those tournaments. So, and we see what he normally does with the putter. If his putter is, I don't even think it's going to be neutral. I think he's going to be positive with the putter. I think that those are 2 anomalies. If we see the type of ball striking that we're looking at right now, which is really, really good in 3 out of the last 4, and the putter rebounds, this is a guy that could easily finish in the top 20, if not better. I think Max Grazerman is kind of a cheat code guy because what is keeping him at bay in terms of people not really loving him? They're seeing the finishing positions. They're very respectable, but these could very easily be T12s and T9s instead of T23, T25.
He has like 8 finishes in a row between T22 and T37. It's very good play. He's beating the majority of the fields, and he has a unique skill set, that driver and the putter. And yeah, I probably agree that there are still some more juice to squeeze out of this game. Anybody else? Nick Taylor played well for a while. Thomas Dietrich played well for a while last week.
I like Taylor. I think Sam Stevens is interesting. I don't think a lot of people play him. He played well last week. I may or may not have mentioned Eric Cole. I think Eric Cole is interesting. His history here isn't bad.
Yeah, Sam Stevens is on a decent little run. 23rd at the U.S. Open, 31st at the Memorial, 28th at the Charles Schwab. He hasn't missed a cut since the Texas Open. And the metrics, I'll just pull them up on the screen here real quick, are a lot better than they were in the spring. So definitely finding a little bit of something, particularly on and around the putting surfaces. Okay. Anything else, boys?
One more. Matt Fitzpatrick. Just general talent. Like we kind of, a couple weeks ago we asked, is he back a little bit? Like lost 6.7 strokes tee to green at the US Open. But that putter, like
he can putt.
And yeah, just general skill set. And, again, looking at the finishes, like, I don't know. I think you could do worse in that range, in the 6K range.
Mike, are you starting? I don't know if you've done any simulations, but is it a lot of Scottie and then move down, or is it a lot of starting with somebody like Xander and then a second guy in that's in that range?
It's almost teetering on 50-50, which is interesting to me. And the reason for that is I'm above market on Xander. I have Xander second behind Scottie here. And I'm being early on Xander. I think he can win this. I think he's back. So knowing that I'm meaningfully above the market on Xander, that's why I'm getting those 2 starts close to 50-50. If I were to put my Xander number closer to where just some of the other sources I've seen, then it would be almost 100% Scottie starts.
Interesting.
So I think Scottie's going to carry the ownership.
Okay.
I'm in a massive season long where you just pick the golfers before the season starts and it goes on their earnings. And I've gotten nothing out of Xander. And if I could get anything out of Xander, I'd be winning the whole damn thing. So, I'm speaking into existence, my brother. Like a cool 3.6 million or whatever it is here would be great. Maybe he catches another one later. Like I need like 6 or 7 million out of Xander in the next 6 months, and I'll be very happy. But we got to get going at some point.
Hey Rick, let me ask you, because Ju Young-Oh and Ray Flores have a couple of names that, and Brad Kirian it's not Ju Young-Oh actually, it's Brad Kirian and Ray Flores. Victor Hovland, Rick, you're the Victor Hovland friend / whisperer, so you have to kind of tell us whether you think that grind over 4 rounds is going to affect him. I tend to agree with Brad in the chat that it might not. And then thoughts on Adam Scott. I want to answer that one first, and then you guys can respond. I'm not in on Adam Scott. I was in on him last week. If you remember, I had him as a first-round leader. I played him in DFS. I think he shows up for these big events. I know that's a ride down narrative street a little bit, but I think after last week, it's going to be a letdown with him specifically. But Rick, how about Vic?
I'm probably more bullish than average. He is a very he's a very fit guy. I don't think it's going to be a big grind on him. The dude grinds constantly. He hits so many golf balls every single day. I'm not worried about that. I am worried. The only thing that would worry me is I believe at this point his range of outcomes is very wide because I think he's like the most aggressive player on the PGA Tour. And there's going to be a lot of temptation to take dead aim this week and just go for it. If that works out, he's going to make a ton of birdies, but he has historically, when he gets very aggressive, it doesn't always work out well for him. So I'm still bullish because I think the game is really close, but I think it's kind of a strategy thing for him this week.
Mm-hmm. I will say that looking at the weighted ball striking over the 26 rounds, which again, I just kind of came up with that number, but even focused on the last 12 rounds, Hovland is really high on both of those lists. And when you look at the opportunities plus and things of that nature, he's pretty high on that list as well.
Yeah. The other thing is like, don't listen to anything he says. When he tells you he's like a 4 out of 10, don't even listen to that. When he tells you he's a 9 out, none of it matters. Just like, look at the numbers, use your eyeballs, watch the game. Like, do not listen to anything he says because he is like, it doesn't help the case at all.
Fair.
We've got plenty more coming this week, including the best bets, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, right here on the Sportsline YouTube channel. But for now, I'm going to say thank you very much. Producer Josh does all the hard work behind the scenes. Mike McClure, see you, Nejad. I'm Rick Gehman. This has been the Early Wedge. We'll catch you next time.